here of people coming out to vote uncommitted instead of voting for Joe Biden or anybody else on the ballot, it will showcase that there is a real chance, and I think we're already seeing that, but there's a real chance that Biden will lose Michigan in the general. And former Representative Andy Levin, again, another Democrat, he's also backed this effort, saying he warned that Mr. Biden could lose the state to former President Donald Trump in the general election without a major change in Israel policy. So the hope here is to try and put pressure on Joe Biden by showcasing an important state like Michigan, how he could lose that state by looking at the results in the upcoming Michigan primary. Now, Rashida Tlaib, of course, as I said, has backed this effort as well, saying to vote uncommitted. Here is a clip of her discussing this. This is with Listen to Michigan. So there's two groups a part of this. Our Revolution, Listen to Michigan is another one. And here is Tlaib discussing this.
Know that you can early vote today until February 17th. They are open here, specifically here from 9 to 5. Check with your local clerks. There are early voting all throughout the 12th Congressional District. It is also important to create a voting block, something that is a bullhorn to say enough is enough. We don't want a country that supports wars and bombs and destruction. We want to support life. This is the way you can raise our voices. Don't make us even more invisible. Right now, we feel completely neglected and just unseen by our government. If you want us to be louder, then come here and vote uncommitted.
All right, so before I get to more clips on this from Andy Levin and more of my thoughts, I want to focus on this quote here from Rashida Tlaib, where she says, quote, "This is the way you can raise our voices. Don't make us even more invisible." Telling people who are angry with Joe Biden over his support of the far right-wing Israeli government, don't stay home. Come out and show that you are angry with Biden, and do it in this very specific way by voting uncommitted. It's very important to note this. These voters and Rashida Tlaib are not trying to hurt Joe Biden. They're trying to warn him. Hey, you will lose the election if you continue supporting this genocide. You will lose this coalition of voters, Arab Americans, younger voters, people that care about human rights. You will lose this coalition that helped to lead you to win in 2020 if you do not change course on Israel. So this is a warning. This is not hurting. Again, this is the primary. This is not hurting Joe Biden. Joe Biden's going to become the nominee regardless of what happens in Michigan. It is simply a warning that you may lose this very important state and other states because of your position on this issue. Now, this is when we get to Andy Levin. So before I show you a few clips from his reaction to this on MSNBC, this was the result in his last race. A pro-Israel group poured millions of dollars to primary Andy Levin, a Jewish candidate. So Andy Levin is Jewish. Again, it's important to note here, in case you're still confused about this, just because somebody's Jewish doesn't mean they support Israel. And anyone that thinks that in itself is an anti-Semitic thought. Supporting a far right-wing Israeli government, it has nothing to do with being Jewish. Some of the leading groups that are against what the right-wing Israeli government is doing and for a ceasefire are Jewish groups. Jewish Voice for Peace, Independent Jewish Voices, an Israeli human rights organization, B'Tselem. So there are many individuals and many groups that represent Jewish people who are supporting a ceasefire and want to see the end of the destruction of Gaza. It's important to note that, because here you had a pro-Israel group thinking that Andy Levin wasn't sufficiently pro-Israel enough and put a ton of money into the primary to defeat him, even though he was a self-described Zionist. But it wasn't enough for this for AIPAC here. So this gets to again, I discussed this is in addition to the groups I mentioned. Hundreds of Jewish organizations or organization staffers call for White House to back Gaza ceasefire. Again, important to separate Jewish people from Israel. They are not one and the same, obviously. Here is Andy Levin discussing why he supports this effort to vote uncommitted in Michigan.
It's not Our Revolution or Listen to Michigan like whipping this up. People are not going to vote for Joe Biden on February 27th because they are really mad at him. Their cousins are dying. Their friends are dying. And it's not just Arab Americans. You're right. We are the densest Arab American state. We also have 250,000 Muslims in Michigan. We have 1.4 million African Americans. And you just saw the AME bishops going even farther in saying that we ought to suspend all aid to Israel, military aid to Israel. And then you've got 370 some thousand 18 to 24-year-old voters, all of whom are very upset. Now, these are somewhat overlapping groups, right?
Right.
But Eamon, Joe Biden won Michigan by 150,000 votes in 2020. We need these people to vote for Joe Biden on November 5th.
All right, so I'm going to get some reaction from people that are not in support of this, that support Joe Biden, and my thoughts on their thoughts as well. But this point is that Andy Levin there is made is very important. This is not these groups trying to convince voters in Michigan to vote uncommitted. This is simply what the groups are doing is simply a reaction to what the feeling currently is in Michigan, with a lot of people wanting to simply tune out the election completely. This is a way to get people engaged in the political process and show their displeasure with where Joe Biden currently sits on this issue. Now, before I get to more clips, obviously I support this effort, obviously, to support or to vote uncommitted in Michigan. I think it makes complete sense to do this, especially now that you have all of this sentiment organized within this real clear effort, so that if voting uncommitted, sees a ton of support in Michigan in this primary, it'll be clear what that means to both the White House and the Joe Biden campaign and Democrats generally. So I think it's very important to do that if you're in Michigan. It's also important to note that, as I said earlier, just to be clear about where I said on this issue, I think if Trump were in power right now, it would be the same or worse than what it currently is. And you saw, the unwavering support that Trump had for Netanyahu. He signed a declaration reversing U.S. policy on Golan Heights that led to a place there being called Trump Heights. Like, it's very clear where Donald Trump sits on this topic, regardless of how he's trying to be uncommitted right now because he sees the polling and where all that sits. But it's very clear where he would be if he were in power. And then he also vowed, shortly after October 7th, he vowed to expand his travel ban to Gaza, saying that he would not take in any Palestinian refugees. So again, just another example of where he sits. But the reason why I support this effort is twofold. First, I think it lets potentially some air out of the tires. It allows voters to really voice their frustration now instead of having to wait till the general, and it may potentially ease some tension before the general and keep people engaged in the political process. Also, it's clearly a message to Joe Biden and the campaign. If he underperforms in Michigan, it shows him and the party that there is a very good chance that he will lose Michigan and potentially other important swing states if he continues down this path, and that he must change course. Clearly, Biden doesn't care enough about the lives of Palestinians, but maybe he cares enough about his own political career. We're seeing that warning sign to be enough for him to change strategy. At least that's the hope. Now, let me get to again some of the reactions from a couple of Democrats here. This was a clip show shown to Andy Levin, and I'll get to his thoughts as well. But first, let me show you what these Democrats not in support of this are saying.
And so Rashida Tlaib is not there to represent the squad. She's not there to represent Palestine. While there's merit in all those things, you're there to represent your hometown constituency in the city of Detroit. And I will tell all my friends and family in Detroit that your congresswoman has failed you and frankly embarrassed you, and there could potentially be ramifications.
If you want to see Donald Trump beat Joe Biden, then you have voices of Charlemagne and Rashida Tlaib questioning Joe Biden's leadership, suggesting he's not fit for re-election. That's how you do it. Democrats beating themselves.
This is so unbelievably stupid. This idea that if political leaders just ignore the issues with Joe Biden, that's going to be the way to win an election. That's what happened in 2016. And Trump won. You have to be willing to engage. Now, look, maybe they aren't doing it publicly, like these people here. Maybe they're doing it privately. That's another way to try and pressure the president. You don't necessarily, as somebody especially if you're in Congress, you don't necessarily have to be public about your displeasure, but you have to, in some way, understand the risk here and where Joe Biden sits and just how unlikely it is that he will win the general election if what's happening in Gaza continues and if Biden continues supporting Israel as they are doing it. So there has to be both pressure from activist groups, the rare political leader like